So how many people here have heard of Texafari or read Texafari? A couple of you, awesome. So Texafari is a newsletter that I started at the beginning of the year. Have a seat. And really the idea was, how do we write about what's happening in tech in Africa? And I think I've seen the benefits of community building firsthand, right? Like building a community of thousands of readers, of people who come to events, of founders and investors live, and seeing the benefits of that, which is why I'm a little bit obsessed with the idea of community building. And so we've actually put together this A-class team of community builders here to talk about how they built community, how they've embedded it into the things that they built, like products and services, and what we think good community looks like as well. So I'd love to introduce our speakers, starting with Lisa here. Lisa is the commercial director at Raise.
I'm now the managing director.
Oh, nice. Let's hear it for that, for Lisa. Promotion. Nice, okay, glad that's out the bag.
Officially now.
Officially, great, Thea. And sorry, next to Thea. So Thea is the co-founder of Women Who Build Africa and head of marketing and communication at Stitch. Feel free to say hello.
Hi, everyone. Hello.
And Yacob Berhane here is the CEO and co-founder of Pariti.
Hi, everyone.
So we're going to dive a bit into what each of these people here do and how community is embedded in what they do. And let's start with Lisa. Can you tell us a bit about Raise? Raise is sort of building Raise is building services and products and tools for founders. And I'm really curious to know, how do you think about community and how community fits into building out tools and resources for founders across Africa?
So Raise specifically focus on equity management solutions and services. We, like you, are obsessed with making sure that equity in Africa is managed effectively and coherently for founders, because this is a developing ecosystem and we don't typically as founders know how to manage equity effectively. So Raise's core value is we're built by Africans for Africa. So we take that hard line that everything that we build and everything that we do and all the services that we offer is offered by Africans to Africa. And that's the cornerstone or the starting point of everything, the ethos that we do. So with our software and our services, there is that knowledge that this is a developing ecosystem. This is not a first world ecosystem. Entrepreneurs typically in Africa are doing it for the first time. So a lot of what we do has an educational approach to it. You and I work very closely on ensuring that we do a lot of educational events for our founders, getting them to understand how equity can be managed, how shares are issued, and how to better navigate the world of equity distribution. So we do a lot of education around that. And then we also work very closely with accelerators, with law firms, with VCs as a partner, ensuring that their cohorts, their funds are educated well. So we even offer things like coaching and mentoring sessions to the accelerators that we work with so that they can educate those in their cohorts better about valuations, about equity management. Myself, I've taken up unpaid board seats on some of the startups that we've worked with, particularly around female founders, because I believe that they're needing an extra level of support. So it's really embedded in our team. And the last thing that I think was really important is that Raise offers valuation services. And typically valuations, and Dario was talking about it in the last session, was that valuations have been problematic across Africa because they've been benched against global standards. There were multiples of 16 and up, which is a global standard, and that's just not applicable to Africa and our African businesses. So Raise launched last month local benching for valuations to ensure that the companies that are coming in have a credible and defensible view of what their valuation status is, and the VCs that we're working with can also trust that they've got a credible view of the businesses that they're investing in. And that's so it's really built into a foundational layer of our ethos, by Africans for Africans.
Yeah, love that. There are a lot of gems in that. I think two of the things I found really interesting was that it sounds like Raise plays not just with founders, but with all the players. So you'll also work with VCs, other ecosystem people to figure out, hey, how do we standardize and make building a company in Africa as simple or as easy as possible, right?
Exactly. We're actually in prototyping phase with some of the largest VCs, Launch Africa, et cetera, in order to build out VC standards.
Yeah.
So that we've got African VC standards and that we're not playing by a global standard that doesn't match our local infrastructure.
Yeah, that's awesome. The other takeaway I got from that was, firstly, on board seats. I never thought they were paid, but that's a sentiment.
You should join more boards.
Yeah, I should. I'm not on any yet, actually, which explains something. But I think that's really cool. It sounds like community is not just a thing; it's also embedded into culture at Raise, right? You're really embedded. You, Marvin, other people on the team are really proactive in the ecosystem as people at the team level as well.
And that's important, is that, if you're signing up to work with or for Raise, there has to be that culture match. It was one of the things that I was militant about when I joined Raise was, let's overhaul this culture in this business. A lot of startups don't do that, and then their culture starts to, dictating how they are run.
Yeah.
It's not done formally. So when we did it formally and we put in place those things, the foundational cornerstone was by Africans for Africans. And it's an ethos that then gets carried away through into our product and service build.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Lisa. Yacob, let's hear from you, man. Tell us a bit about, I think Pariti is a really unique sort of community-driven approach. There's a lot of things you do, but something I found super interesting is how you hire. So thinking about talent and how to build a community around talent to source better talent. And we know as founders here, hiring is a big challenge, massive challenge across the continent. So can you tell us a bit about how you built this system at Pariti and how it works and what you've seen come out of it?
Yeah, for sure. So the way I communicate Pariti is we identified that there was an asymmetry between knowledge and resources, and that was hindering innovation. So we wanted to solve that by helping founders have access to capital and talent. You need to raise money, and you're usually raising money to hire people, so it's the same customer going through different experiences. We started off with ventures, where we used a scout program to actually train our machine learning to create a Pariti score and help founders understand what they need to work on to be more investable, how they can get in front of investors, and created that into a marketplace to connect investors and founders. And then we did the same thing on the talent side. So we've always said community and data are superpowers, and a scout program usually yields really good results for sourcing startups, and referrals are usually the best way to hire. Majority of times it's based on trust. There's an underlying factor that goes into it. And the same way we looked at ventures, we looked at talent and said, would you want one or two recruiters recruiting for you? Or would you want our community, which is now close to 8,000 people globally that are all actively hunting for the roles that you're trying to get filled? And we have very clear incentive alignment. Our community gets paid only if the person that got hired makes it past probation. So we save hiring managers 35 hours on average, and 98% of our hires actually get past probation. And for our community, we've now actually been able to say that $70,000 actively has just been dispersed through bounties because we have a revenue share with our community. And it actively creates like real income for them. So that's the way that we've looked at it, and now we have a community of 3,000 founders and ventures and 8,000 referrers, and collectively we launched Pando, and I actually have another Pando member here, Thea, and then Marvin from Raise. And Pando's a community of venture-backed founders. We're all trying to figure it out. We all have very similar like common denominator problems. So I think the basis of community is operating with integrity, having intention, and then actively being useful. And that creates a very thriving community.
And having hired through Pariti, I can speak for them, is that the talent that comes through Pariti is top class.
Yeah.
We've hired one of our best financial analysts through Pariti. So as a customer testimonial sitting here, I can vouch that it does actually work.
Nice.
We use Raise also for cap tables.
Nice. Look at this ecosystem. This is community here.
That's true. This is community.
Stitch, where's that at? But Yacob, tell us a bit about how did you build the model? Like, how did you come up with the idea of, okay, instead of people just doing the traditional recruitment process, let's build a model around referrals. Like, was it an organic thing? Tell us a bit how you landed on Pariti for Talent.
Yeah, so you and I had this conversation actually. I think if you have a real community, they're gonna pull your product forward, and if you have an audience, you're usually just speaking to them. So what happened was the people that built our ventures side, our community, they were like, I wanna get into venture capital. I used to be a VC, I ran an accelerator. We designed an opportunity for them to build almost like a shadow portfolio. And then we did the same thing on talent where they were like, actually, I think I have a lot of good people in my community that are not good for this role, but they would be good if I had another role for them. So we just designed it, and then you use data science. You can kind of just look at it and say, like, this person who has a product background is really good at referring product people. And this because there's social capital underscoring it. Like, I wouldn't, say you should talk to Lisa about marketing or Thea about marketing if I didn't think they were good, because my reputation is on the line. It creates this contract of agreement. Now, if you map that with data, it makes you have a really unique ability to scale. The thing that happened that we didn't have any control over is there was a huge breakthrough in AI, so computational power. So it allowed us to actually create a lot of auto vetting, auto screening, auto matching that led to investors paying for access to vetted deal flow and founders paying to access for vetted talent.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love the story, and it kind of like aligns with this idea, which I'm also obsessed with, which is community-built products. So you build the community and you foster a community, and your products will come out of it. And I actually think more founders should probably start with meeting and understanding the people behind their products first and let them build it. So it's cool that that's how you built Pariti.
Like, one thing I would even say is our community is earning monthly, right? So the average GDP in Africa per annum is 1,700. We have some people in our community that make 3x that. But a problem that we have, and we have town halls with our community, is the international, like, you know this because you work in fintech, but like, if someone earns $20 because they got a candidate to the final round of interview, if I have to send a wire to Nigeria or Mali or like Ghana or wherever I'm sending the money to, it's getting eroded. So like, something that we're working on in our community is like, who can we partner with to build like embedded wallets? So the people that are earning in our community aren't like, oh, I made $1,000 on this like big payout, so the transaction fee doesn't kill me. But you make $20 for someone like that doesn't make that much money. I guess a big deal. So something we're constantly trying to figure out is like, can we use Web3 on and off ramps, bring down transaction fees? Like, our mission at Pariti is to build like opportunities through entrepreneurship, and anything that creates friction and erodes that is something that we deal with our community to build better solutions for it. And they not only will tell us, they will actively scream at us and be like, I don't like this, do this differently.
Yeah, love that. That's awesome. Thanks for that, Yacob. Thea, so Women Who Build has become the main space for women who are building across the continent. Back to origin stories, how did it start, and how and why did you kick off Women Who Build Africa?
Sure, yeah. So we started Women Who Build Africa in, I think it was May last year. So my co-founder, Guerra, also works in the fintech space. We both kind of have full-time jobs. And it honestly started over coffee. We just kind of realized, like, hey, there isn't a community like this. Like, where is there a space that we can go to find other women that are working and building in the tech space on the continent? So we just kind of figured, hey, we would like this thing to exist, so let's build it, And the kind of response that we saw and the demands that we continue to see just shows how much of a need there is for this in the ecosystem. So I think, for us, it's a bit different than these guys in that this is community for community's sake. So we're actively just always trying to figure out what it is that's needed in the ecosystem and to provide that to our members. So at the moment, we have, I think it's like 800 people on our Slack channel. We've got a few thousand on our mailing list. We throw events. And it's really amazing to see, because something sort of magical happens when you're, for the first time in a space as a woman working in tech in Africa, where you're the majority. Right. So we had our first big event back in September, and that was the case. And like, the conversations that came out of that, the fact that all these women were sort of raising their hands to share their insights, which they have, on how businesses can build a more inclusive team, a more inclusive portfolio if you're an investor, how we can elevate more women to get into the tech space, how we can elevate more women to become leaders within the tech space. Because as we all know, it also makes a huge difference when you see someone like you on a leadership team, right? Or or you're having conversations with other people like you that have gone through that experience and gotten, somewhere farther. And so it's kind of an amazing space to create that we just didn't see happen before. And some awesome things have come out of that. I was actually just randomly talking to someone in the audience before. He was like, oh yeah, I found like a bunch of clients from your Slack channel, right? So we see people like in DMs finding employees, finding investors, finding co-founders, finding clients, finding whatever. And all because we also want to like lift up and support other women. And so yeah, it's been a really incredible ride.
That's awesome. In May this year?
In May last year.
Okay.
About a year and a half, yeah.
Cool. So, I mean, one of the things about Women Who Build is how inclusive it is. I'd love to know for the people here, how can we build more inclusive products, companies, communities from your learnings?
Yeah, so for us, I think from the beginning, we made it very clear that we wanted the community to be for women of any sort of stage of their career. So in the very first meetup we held, which by the way, we thought was just gonna be like a few of our friends kind of, in my backyard chatting about what we do at work. And I wanna say like 40 to 50 people showed up. So we were like, oh wow, okay. But we told them, you have to bring someone along that is like a junior woman in her career. And we made it open to, not just people that work in tech now, that people were interested in just learning more about the space. People that were lawyers, that were, tech adjacent, that were just interested in understanding kind of what goes on here, right? And having those conversations, because where else can you go where that space is so open and available to you? And so that's how we built our community. And at the moment, it's still very much like that. Anybody can really join. We also welcome allies. It's very important that we're not just having this conversation amongst ourselves, but there are also, male colleagues and friends in the room who are sort of understanding our experience. But I think going back to how you build inclusion at organizations, it's a lot of what I said before. We have to make sure that there's women at stages of leadership, right? That like other women can see themselves in that position moving forward, right? Making sure that there are mentors they can speak to, making sure that there are safe spaces. The reality is, as we know, gender parity is like nowhere near where it needs to be in the tech space. And a lot of times, women can go through an entire day just being surrounded by men, just being surrounded by masculine energy. And I think, we have a lot of work to do there, but like knowing that they have other people in their immediate surroundings that they can talk to about a shared experience, who kind of go through life the same way that they do is super important. And knowing that they also have support from leadership at the company is really big. And I think the other piece of that, which I love to see like Yacob and doing a lot of work in this space too, is we also need to make sure that there's enough coming in through the top of the funnel, right? So that's why a big piece of what we do is to put a spotlight on the women that are, senior leaders, that are builders, that are founders, that are investors, and making sure everybody knows that they're there, right? And so when you're looking for that next hire, making sure at least the pool at the very beginning is equal, even if not all of them make it to the final role. So.
That's awesome. Thanks, Thea. We're going to throw to the audience. If anyone here has a question for this brilliant panel, we have time for about one question. So. And there should be someone walking around with a microphone over there. Yes, okay. Anyone have any questions for us?
Don't all shout at once. Okay, calm down, everybody. Just calm down.
We have over here. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Akina Daniel. I come from Uganda. I'm just wondering, I was trying to share with my neighbor, what is it there for us as the African, as East Africans, that our startups, our technology do not emerge successfully as like we have been discussing. I'm not a racist, but it appears as if most of these successful enterprises adapt with the colors. I'm very sorry to use that, but it's like from outside to Africa. If you give an example of ventures like Safaricom, M-Pesa in Uganda, the Safe Border, some of these successful venture investment, small business startups are not ours. So help me. What is it there for us? What are we not doing that we are not emerging successfully? Are we not able to attract our own market and build our business so that we can also emerge as successful entrepreneurs in Africa and export it elsewhere outside the continent.
Yeah.
That is it from me. Thank you very much.
That's a brilliant question. So I think,
Can you repeat that, Caleb?
sorry?
Can you summarize that?
Yeah. So I think, tell me if I've summarized this okay. The question is, we have a lot of startups here that are people or I guess companies that have come here rather than local homegrown startups. So what does it take for us to build a startup ecosystem for our own market here? Is that about right?
I really want to see African man like me doing a business that's crossing the East African region and where I need to be, crossing outside Africa. We have been in startup business for more than 5 years. You cannot even raise $100,000. If you want to raise more money, you must have someone from outside. Is it that our ecosystem does not have enough capital to support our ventures and the other people are able to support people whom they trust, they think they can do things much better than us? That is it from me.
Yeah, so it's what can we do to enable that, right?
To enable more capital?
Yes, for local founders.
How many people were here for Dario's? Dario answered that question actually very precisely. Like, foreign capital looks at emerging markets as R&D, right? Like, this is not where they're going to make their money in their portfolio. Like, the way venture capital works is you have an agreement with your lending, like your limited partners, right? You're gonna say, I'm gonna put 80% of the capital towards new investments, 20% or 15% to follow on or something, or maybe like 2% is allocated for research and development. We're the 2%. Like, that's the hard thing. It's like, we're the 2%. For you to make an argument for why more foreign capital would come here, you need to have a consistent GDP growing. You need to have like more money going to the everyday person that's walking around that has ability to consume more products. If not, then you need DFIs, like you need more like grant funding and things like that, because local capital right now also is like trying to build roads, trying to fill, like we're trying to feed people, break even on calories, like actually have consistent running water and electricity. So it's really the top of the funnel, how much money is coming here. And when you have a huge macroeconomic shift like we just did, all venture capital is gonna have to retrench. There was a fund that just announced actually today, there's a fund that raised $2.2 billion and is shutting down because they can't keep going. Like, so the money is the short answer is just there's not enough money coming here, and until we have like consistent exits, there's not going to be a good enough argument for why more foreign capital will come.
Lisa, hit us.
I think this might be a little bit of a controversial comment. I'm not known for that at all. But like, pay your own school fees. Like, for me, as a bootstrapped founder previously, now working in a VC-backed business, like, bootstrap your own growth, pay your own school fees, pay your own lessons, find product market fit and stop asking another company to pay for your own school fees. I think, you know, if we want more capital to flow, show that you've done the hard yards. And in fact, then you won't have to go and ask for capital anywhere else because you will be self-funded. You'll wipe your own face. I think, you know, if you're building in small iterations, going to your customers, getting feedback, that feedback cycle is really healthy, and you will establish product market fit so much faster than if you get someone else to dump a whole lot of funds in your business for you to try and figure it out. Those lessons do not stick. And if they do, they take a long time and they cost a lot of money.
Totally.
And then they pull the ladder up. Like, if you don't figure it out, they're gonna be like, all right, all that money left. Like, our ecosystem contracted 50%. 50% of the capital has left. Then you're like, oh my God, I got addicted to venture capital and I actually don't have a break-even model to pay my school fees, or like that whole concept. So this is really, really tough. Like, but if their capital isn't here and you don't have the exits, it's hard to convince more money to come.
Totally. And I think, like, maybe just from a startup perspective, storytelling is something we do a lot of. What stories are out there in the public about startups across Africa? if you look across the last 8 months, they're not that positive. It's a lot of startups shutting down. It's a lot of startups that maybe haven't been managed the best way. So my question is, how do we tell stories of the successful founders and amplify them and support them? And I think that comes first to changing some of that narrative, because ultimately a global investor will invest in what they trust. They trust things they're familiar with. They're not very familiar with the continent. So how do we make them more familiar is one of the steps I think we need to take in sort of building that bridge of capital. Any final remarks before?
I was going to say, I echo that. I think it's very important to have, and Nick knows this about me, like to tell more of the stories and tell more honest stories. I think also what's important to note is like, if you're a first-time founder, there's a lot to learn about the responsibility that comes with taking investments, right? Like you're gonna make mistakes, and there's nuances of like how to build a proper board, how to build a proper team, how to make sure that runway lasts, and that's not evident. That's not something you learn in school. So I think also like the power of communities, and one thing that we can do is also provide others that you can speak to or mentors that you can talk to about this that have been there and done that and can share those sort of like war stories along the way. And I think as we build a bigger community around this and this ecosystem, there will be more of those, but that's somewhere where, we're lagging in comparison to a lot of other markets. So that's why we're here.
Awesome.
I agree with you. You can't be what you can't see.
Yeah.
Wait, I would also add, there's a book called Chip Wars, and we went on walks and talked about this, but like if you go look at the US, like the venture ecosystem there was actually propped up by the military. Like that was like one of the biggest customers that kind of pushed forward the semiconductors, which then led to like the Googles and Apples and all that. But like it started in the 50s. Like our ecosystem is 10 years old. We're infants. We're like in day one. And just what Thea just said, there's so many things that will kill you as a startup. Like, oh, I messed up on my payroll, and then now I have so much taxes that I have to pay. Like, that's an expensive mistake. I incorporated in the wrong place. So then I have to reincorporate and have a transfer price. I have to transfer my IP. The venture capitalist will not actually send the wires until I do that. That's going to be a new like 150,000 to sometimes even like in the millions of dollars of like, that's an expensive lesson. We don't have a generation of founders that exited that'll be like, don't do that. That's death. You die if you do that. We don't have that. There's a lot of people that are figuring that out in real time, and there's not capital following behind that to be like, man, that was a really hard lesson. All right, we survived that. Here's some more money to keep you going. It's like, that was an unfortunate mistake.
I like that. Sorry to cut you off. I'm just going to wrap up this by saying I love that idea. And one of the questions I wanted to ask is, why is like an ecosystem or a community so important for our ecosystem today? A very, very early ecosystem, right? And I think it's for these reasons, because we need to be able to share these lessons, to share support, to build more inclusive ecosystems together. And so that's where I see the role of community coming in. Guys, thank you so much. Such a pleasure. Let's hear it for our panel.